Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Ready to talk about web apps or proprietary apps or whatever it is we like to use?
Oh yeah, apps, browsers, we love them all.
Yeah, absolutely. We're living in a kind of a spoiled age, I guess, really, because there's just so much capability in any devices that we use, from the ones we carry around in our pockets to, you know, the still big machines you can get for your desk. Yes, it's they're not completely dead yet. But there's been a continual pushes over the years to try to go for what's in effect a universal app platform where it doesn't matter what device you use, it doesn't matter what operating system it's using, you can use that same app and you don't have to necessarily recode it or rewrite it for different platforms. In effect, the latest version of what that is a progressive web app, which is apparently touted as something that could be potentially something that could finally get this idea off the ground. But it would seem to me that the issue, and it sounds like it's a good idea, doesn't it? That you could have this in it doesn't matter what you're running. You basically just have open a browser and then type it in and it would start working. And maybe you had some sign-ins in your browser to handle if there was like sign-in aspects to it or whatever. But it always seems to fall over because, and this is where you wonder whether as a user you're being shortchanged, because the economic benefits to the people that are creating, or the companies that are creating these things, fall over when they realize that if they made everything proprietary, they would make more money. And not that I want to criticize Apple here or anything, but you can see it very clearly with the origins, or the first first year or two of the iPhone, where Steve Jobs was clearly going down a path of, we've chucked a couple of apps on the phone, but the rest of them are going to be, in effect, web apps that are run out of the Safari web browser. And that died in the arse, so to speak, because within a year they'd gone completely around to an app store, and developers had to develop apps through the App Store, which would be installed as separate apps on the phone as opposed to running through the browser. So is that really fair, though, that's where it's gone? I mean, I know they're holding the cards so they can control it and how this rolls out, but it seems like the user isn't given a choice in this respect.
No, they're not, obviously. But I think if you look at the traditional browser platform, it obviously evolved with what PCs could do at the time, which has nothing to do with the mobile experience, and it has to do with an early internet where there really wasn't any entertainment on the internet, and there really wasn't a whole lot of shopping, and we're talking about 20 years ago, a whole lot of shopping on the internet, but there was a lot of information. And that's why Google is Google today, because it's all about search and all about information. I think what we're seeing here now is a tension between those three things. The internet now provides information and entertainment and shopping, commerce. And I think, when we look at these in-web apps, it makes more sense, I think, commercially, to be able to control what occurs within an app. And but the tension is what do you want to use your browser for? So I think that's actually where there's a clear business case for the companies that want to develop apps and want to develop even in-web apps, and what the user wants to use a browser for versus an app for. And I think that's where it gets really tricky.
Well, we'll use us as an example. Some time ago, we switched over to WebRTC to do this podcast. So, and it's working really well. It's been a really good platform. And when you think about it, and for those that don't know, it's running through Chrome. So you just type in a web address, you click join, and you can customize, they call it a room, and you can customize the room so that nobody else can join in unless you give them the specific link. And bang, we're now essentially video conferencing through a browser. Now, historically we would have to have used Skype, FaceTime. Primarily, they're the two that we've used in the past, but they're proprietary. So one's Microsoft, one's Apple, and the Apple one obviously is even worse because you have to use an Apple device to use FaceTime as well. At least Skype is cross-platform, but even then, Microsoft is locking you into a specific app platform to use that functionality. So with this WebRTC, it's across the board. That you just have to get not every browser is compatible with it, but you can use basically Chrome or Firefox effectively to run this on any platform. So, but you don't see broad adoption of WebRTC, for instance. What you do see is the push for FaceTime, the push for Skype, and other sort of apps, so to speak. And they're the ones that people know and that people will go to. So again, it's like you were saying, there's that tension there. You would think that something as simple as what WebRTC is, and if you have a look at the functionality of how it works, it's actually far simpler than what Skype is. It's and FaceTime's pretty simple, but it's even simpler than what FaceTime is. Why that it can't be more broadly adopted, apart from the fact that they probably need to get a more marketable name for it.
Yeah, look, I think you're right, and I think you've hit on a good example just by using us. So, for instance, I really don't do a lot of online retail. I don't have much interest in it. If I did, I would probably prefer an app that went direct to the supplier. Would be my preference, rather than, because I'm probably not going to use the browser for that. For me, a browser is about information, potentially entertainment, because I like the bigger screen of a laptop over a tablet, say, or maybe a phone. And it's that integration. And I think what's driving a lot of the sort of integrated apps is a commercial response, as you've said. And, I think commercial responses are really best done on a mobile. Even shopping is probably, you'd rather do it on a mobile. I think there's something about the format of a laptop or a PC, if you've still got one of those, that makes it more about information or true browsing, not the search for a product or a source. So the RTC one's a really interesting one because it's really useful, and it's, it's every bit as good as Skype or FaceTime. But I do wonder. I think the real push for these integrated apps now are probably coming more through a pure commercial driver, in which case then, as you've outlined, it's always better to have your own app. You can monetize it. You can lock people into it. In the browser, I think there's too much room to move, so it's very hard to define a tight and sharp business model.
So it would seem that there wouldn't be necessarily a future, at least anytime soon, of a more open. I guess it's kind of an open source type thing that we're talking about here. That it is going to stick to that proprietary sort of aspect.
I just think, I think about it actually from the consumer level. So I think there's a lot of value in the web-based apps, and like Firefox is always asking me to insert another module, which is effectively the same thing. Yeah. But I just don't. I want to search, I want to find, and I'm typically looking for information. And I've had apps like Wolfram Alpha and other apps like that, and at the end of the day, if you're using a larger format device, I think the browser is the place for those apps, but I just don't know that people will use them like that. I think people will just pick up their phone, and whether it's behaviour that's so ingrained to actually opening an app, because let's face it, browsing experience, even responsive websites on a mobile device, smaller than a tablet, really isn't great. So you're always going to go for an app on a mobile device. And I think because of that, and that's where most of our usage is now. I just don't think it's going to catch on in the browser side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just finally, the thought I had then was whether there is a future where it's sort of almost indistinguishable. So the operating system gets to a point where you're not even seeing apps anymore. It's I don't know how they would do it. Obviously, otherwise I'd go work for Apple or something or whatever. That the interface would happen would get to a point where you're not seeing a grid of icons anymore. It's just something that they design an interface in such a way that you're just getting straight to the service you want, and it doesn't even matter what is underpinning it.
Well, I think we've already got that, but people don't see it because they're still used to screens. But Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa, can you tell me you can ask those questions and you can get the answer without a screen. And I think so it's already there.
It just has to mature a lot more, that's all.
Yeah, and it needs to be friendlier. Like the idea that every time you talk to Siri or Alexa or any of those or Google Assistant, that all they're trying to do is sell you something. That's the killer. I think if they can wind that back and you can actually use those services without the fear of the fact that you're being targeted or being harvested. As soon as that happens, then what's the need for a screen?
Yeah,
you'll be able to speak and dictate and, I don't know, get the Word document out of the cloud 3 hours later when you're at your meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there and just finish on the note that, we'll be still using WebRTC for some time, and that might be our only contribution to the whole browser app experience.
For sure. I think that might be it, but let's see if any of the technology changes. I think you're right. Somewhere along the way, it'll all become one.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels and obviously our RSS feed so you can listen to us on your devices. And we'd greatly appreciate you visiting the site and hope you enjoy it. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.